All right. So week 4 in CIT82, and we have a campus holiday on Monday, the 4th. So what that means is all normal Monday night items are moved to Tuesday. Okay. So just know that that's always true, but also know ultimately what that means is you have less time possibly to get these items done. So take a day off, absolutely, but just make sure you stay on track is what I would say. Okay, so we're continuing our HTML and HTML Essential Training Part 2, which in this case I took a look and was looking over the work that you have, which is 4, which is structuring content. And boy, is that good stuff. I mean, really understanding the semantic importance of nav and article and aside. Now, if you take Todd's class, he talks about that even though we are hopefully teaching people to use these elements, you still see a lot of what we call divitis out on the web with people not using them. And part of the reason may be, and hopefully this is going to change over time, is that there's not quite rendering of these the way we would think. So, but it's still good to know and semantically to know that because over time these I think will become more and more important and understanding what they are when you see them. Okay. And then in 5, it's way important, which is creating links, right? So just a fundamental to how to all the different ways to do links. So these are great things to look at. And so I decided I would also look at the exercise files, which I hadn't done, just to see some of the work. And one thing I want you to notice, downloads, and I'll go over this, is that when he's doing these, like on 5, if you just want to look at the reference that he has, right? I'm noticing he's building intro and intro HTML, links HTML, right? So those you can put however you want, but I'm going to show you how I recommend doing it, which is basically putting it in a folder for that week. Now, because this week will span 2 days, we will have the Tuesday and then the Thursday of also continuing this training, and then actually the third, we won't go all the way through this training. So we'll end it here at this part. Matter of fact, let's just take a peek here to see. In this case, we'll do 6 and 7, right? So we'll end up doing 6 and 7 for the next one. Okay, so going back, here's what I ended up doing. I went to my drive here. Now you could do this in VS Code, but I think I talked about last time. Sometimes it's a little bit of a weirdness trying to create new directories sometimes depending on how you have your folder open, but I did it by going here to the interface, the web interface, and then just creating a week 4. Okay, so I want to see your code along. Now within here, because you're creating new files or, coding along, if you want to create subdirectories for that as well, that's fine. And then you could even, if you wanted to do a Tuesday, Thursday thing, I'm going to let you do that however you want. Is what I'll look for is I'll look for the code along that you coded following along. Okay. All right. So, and now the other thing, and we're going to talk about this next, is that when building out that, when I looked at the exercise files, there is an important file called the index file, and the reason this is going to come up is for our next item. So you're going to need to set up, because we're moving into our GitHub part of this class, and we're going to end up using GitHub pages, okay? So you're going to get started with GitHub. In this hands-on experience of here is that you'll need to set up your account, and you're going to create a GitHub repo that will turn out to be a website that we will post ultimately your class project into. Okay, so this is kind of like baby step 1. I shouldn't call it a baby step, it's just step 1, all right, in doing this, which is setting up the GitHub, and then later we'll install. So Git is a version control, okay, software. GitHub is a website where people place their code that they've used Git to version control. You're going to learn this through this class. And then GitHub pages, by the way, you should be taking notes right now, right? hopefully you know, right, that this is the note-taking class topics part of our class. So in your lecture document, make sure you're following along. And then pages is a way that you can take the repos, and these are repositories, and then set them up in such a way that they actually become websites. Okay, so first set up your GitHub account. So go to GitHub. If you don't already have an account, create a new account. If you don't have one, create a new account, and pay special attention to the username that you're creating, because that'll be an important part when you do this next step. Okay, so now I happen to have various organizations. You probably won't have that, although you may. But once you log in, and then what you'll do is you'll come over here and you'll sit to new repo, okay, a new repository. And what's most important is the name you give it. And now ultimately you can create repositories that aren't what we call hosted, or what converts into pages, that is a website. You can give the name doesn't matter as much, but in this case you have to use your username, so it has to match that .github.io, not rio.io. Okay, so when you do that, repo site for CIT82, and you do have to have it public. You can initialize what we call a git or a readme and a git ignore, which is good, and I can show you on VS Code what that means. Or this is basically file when you set up a git ignore, it's telling it don't version control particular files. And what that would be for us is when I showed you how to set up the task.json. This directory is probably one we do not want to version control. Okay, so but for today what we're going to do is just kind of do the straightforward part of this. So go ahead and initialize a readme. We'll come back later. Matter of fact, I think I've looked in here for VS Code, and the git ignore was just huge. So I'll show you how to do it manually. Okay, so for now, initialize a readme, make it public, fill in the thing, make user.github.io. Okay, so create the repo. Now, there's nothing in the repo except the README file right now. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a new file. And the first file generally for any website, that's why when I was looking at the exercises for the lynda.com, I was a little surprised he didn't set up an index file, but you know, that's okay. So we're going to go ahead and create an index file. So I'm going to create a file. Okay, and right here it is. Right now you could actually go into VS Code and actually grab, it's not a bad idea actually here, if you don't remember, right, and I actually think I had you create an index file, but if you didn't, I'll just do that. So I could even do it here. I could create a new file, call it index.html, and because I'm lazy, shift exclamation mark and then tab for Emmett creates that standard template code for an HTML document. So I'd copy that, right, and then I'd come over here and paste it. Cool, so that at least gives me the start, right, and then I could put Rios CIT82 repo, and then in here, right, do like, now this is where I'm gonna, after the video stops, I'm gonna go and play around and create a real page, but for now this is okay. At least it gives you something, right? So if you do H1, so now this is where coding without an editor is really painful for me, because I get so, and I think we all get so accustomed to, right, so H2, the obligatory hello world, right, H2. Good, so that's actually enough for now. Commit, and it says it has a default commit message. You're going to learn about these as we move on to the next part, but for now I'm just going to say adding index and then first commit. Okay, and I'll commit the new file. Commit to the branch. I'm trying to think of see what's in here. that it's not liking. Oh, the name. That's funny. That's funny. Took me a minute to see it, right? So now creating, and actually it kind of had it in there, right? Let's see now. Yeah, now we have it. I was like, that was great. That was not, because you got to do that part right there. And again, this is the importance I was saying, is that your first file is generally, depending on what kind of site, but most any website has an index of some type. The extension could be different, but it's always not always, most of the time it's an index called index, and that's the first file that brings up. Adding my index file. Okay, and then you commit it, boom. Okay, so now what this gives you, if you've done it right, is a website. Okay, so you're building the repo, but you're also making, if you're setting up the repo in such a way that you now have a website. And so what you can do is just grab this first part, right, just the real, your username, so you can copy it if you want, go to a new tab, and if you did it right, you'll have at least some basic text that's in there that you will see. Okay, so then all you have to do here is copy, once it actually shows up and you know it's fine. And by the way, you can go back here later if you want, and you can modify this inside of GitHub by hitting the pencil to do that. If you want to add some more, you could even add a CSS file. That's what I'll probably end up doing. As a matter of fact, I was thinking I might take the design, just the basic layout that is in the exercise files for lynn.com, and just kind of play with that a little bit. But there's all kinds of different places, and this is part of what you'll learn through the class as well. Okay, but going back here, so what you need to do here is, once you get that resolved, and make sure you put something in the title and you have something at least shows up. Might be fun for you to go ahead and put in your photo as well, and by now you know how to do that. Let's see, I think, has he covered that in doing images? Let me see through here. Yeah, displaying images, so you know how to do that if you wanted. So at least play with this a little bit and have something, but we'll add to this over time. Okay, so what you'll do here is, in your reply, then you will just say, and you could do this, like you could just paste it in like that. Might be nice to make them a little larger, right, which is kind of nice, just because they're easier to click on. So like a heading 2, there you go, and then link that, right? So insert it. Make sure you do your, hopefully by now you've got this. Target equal underscore blank. Okay. All right, and then write something 150 words about just the process of doing this, and then do your replies. Okay. All right, so that the other thing you have to do this week for this item, this first week of the item, is watch a video on UTF-8, which is a file format. And this is really great. I think this is so important. Understanding what this format is, where it came from, why it's important, because it is the standard format for documents, and it's just important to understand too the difference between ASCII and Unicode. And you see this term, this UTF-8, around a lot, so it's understanding the history of it. I don't think it's that long. Let me see, again, it's worth watching. It's a good 9 minutes to get this. So then, what you can do here is do some additional, find terms or things you want to learn about, and do some research, and provide links to resources or articles to understand some of the terms he's going to throw in here, or just extend if you already have some knowledge what that is. Okay, so I'll end this one here, and then I will, and again, make sure you've put a few notes into your class topics part of your lecture for here, and then I'm going to play around with my file, and I'll pick it up here, and I'll talk about what we need to do for our second item.